Growing up in my family has always felt like a battle I could not win. I am 21 years old, but to my mother and father, I am still just a background character overshadowed by my cousin. I remember vividly the day when she turned 16, receiving a brand new luxury car worth $50,000 as a birthday gift. The scene is still etched in my mind like a scar that refuses to heal. The sun was bright that day, shining down on a neatly parked black SUV that sparkled like a giant jewel in the driveway, and the sound of clapping hands filled the air as family and friends surrounded her, their faces lit with adoration. "Isn't it amazing?" my mother exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement as she clutched my father's arm, sharing a proud, beaming smile that I had never seen directed towards me. I stood to the side, my heart pounding against my ribcage as I felt the heat of resentment build up inside me. They seemed to applaud her every achievement while ignoring my own accomplishments. I remembered how hard I had worked on my science project the year before. I had stayed up late, poring over books and articles to craft this presentation, only for it to be met with a shrug and a dismissive "good job." The moment I had dreaded came when my cousin hopped into the driver's seat, a look of pure elation on her face. "Look, everyone, I can drive," she shouted, her voice ringing out like a church bell, drawing more attention. I could see my parents' eyes sparkle as they directed their praise her way. "You're going to be the best driver ever," my father laughed, full of warmth. As they circled around her, hands clapping and encouragement flowing like a waterfall, I felt like a ghost standing among them. Invisible, forgotten, erased. My chest tightened as I glanced down at the used bicycle beside me, rusty, old, and lying on the ground like an unwanted toy. I could smell the oil from its chain, an unpleasant scent that mixed with the sweet smell of cake baking in the oven, a sickening reminder of how my place in this family had become a consolation prize. "This is so unfair," I murmured, almost too softly for even myself to hear, but deep down, I could feel a surge of anger rise like a tide within me. My heart raced with jealousy, twisting like a wrench in my stomach. I gripped the handlebars of that bicycle tightly, hoping to crush the very memories it carried. The flat tire felt like a symbolic display of my own deflated hopes, a reminder of how their expectations became breadcrumbs I was never meant to follow. Still, I sought to blend the bitterness with determination. I need to do something, I thought, a plan slowly forming in the darker corners of my mind. No more being overlooked, no more standing in the shadows. Gathering myself, I decided to muster courage and venture forward. "Hey, look at my gift," I hollered, my voice shaking like a spun-out yo-yo. I pointed to the bike, trying to infuse it with some excited energy that was, in a way, my own. "It's vintage." "Really hard to find." My words were drowned out by my cousin's laughter, a sound that felt so foreign to me in a moment that should have felt celebratory. "A bike? Is that all you got?" she teased, her smirk sharper than the edge of a knife, slicing through the remnants of my confidence. I felt the eyes of my family turn towards me, a mixture of surprise and pity, and in that moment, shame crept beneath my skin like a chill. What was I doing? Trying to defend myself against a tidal wave of glory. I wanted to disappear, to blend into the concrete of the driveway as my cousin bounced around, her excitement looping around her like vines of victory. "Come on, you guys, help me take a picture," she said, bouncing on her heels, her laughter infectious. "I need to post this on social media." My parents rushed forward to help her, snapping photos as if capturing her every smile was some grand task that needed to be preserved for eternity. Meanwhile, I stood freezing in time, cocooned in my thoughts. "I have something to show too," I whispered to myself, tightly balling my fists. I didn't mean the bike. I could create something spectacular, something that demanded their attention, something that would pull me out of the shadows and into the light, into the spotlight. I wanted to be recognized for my worth, not silently sulking as they cheered her on. But what? A thousand ideas skittered through my mind, each one dismissed as easily as it came. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, but deep down, something cracked, a flicker ignited within me. As the day wore on, I felt the darkness mixing with my resentment, twisting it into focus. "No more," I thought fiercely. "I will reclaim my place in this family." The jealousy, that twisted vine wrapping around my heart, began to morph into a weapon of vengeance. I envisioned countless strategies unfolding before me, each one more elaborate and cunning than the last, each one an opportunity to flip the script. As I walked away from the driveway, my hands numb with unresolved rage, I overheard my cousin raving about her new car, her engine roaring to life like the applause that had been absent from my own experiences. "It's a Mercedes. Can you believe it?" The blaring engine faded into the background, and for the first time, I allowed myself a moment of clarity in the midst of chaos. I am done being the background character, I vowed inwardly. In that moment, a sense of liberation washed over me, fueled by an urge to emerge victorious. My family may have nurtured my cousin, showered her with love like the sun endlessly illuminating her path, but I swore I would find a way to dim that light. I would show them that I was not invisible or inconsequential. I was no mere backdrop in someone else's flawless story. Secrets whispered through the recesses of my mind as I stepped onto the dimly lit porch, planning my rise from the shadows into the spotlight, letting the growing flames of revenge warm my heart. That day, I ignited something within, a spark that would set the stage for my return, a reckoning that would not go unnoticed, a chance to bring balance back to the unequal playing field determined to show my family that I was worthy of their attention and admiration. I buried myself in my studies and activities. The small home I lived in was always filled with the loud chatter of my parents, fascination with my cousin's feats. They seemed to shine like stars while I felt like a shadow, always lurking, always unnoticed. I can still picture the day I earned my scholarship, my heart racing like the beat of a drum, the excitement curling in my stomach like a tightly wound spring. I imagine their proud smiles, the way they would beam with joy radiating from their faces when I shared the news. But when I finally piped up over dinner, the world seemed to shift. I received a scholarship for the university. I announced, hope etched into my voice. "Oh, that's wonderful, sweetheart," my mom replied absent-mindedly, her eyes glued to her phone as if my achievements were just another notification in her endless feed. "Did you hear about how your cousin's art show is going to be featured in that gallery downtown?" I felt the knot in my stomach grow tighter than ever. That was always the pattern, my accomplishments spinning in circles while their eyes focused elsewhere, always leading back to my cousin's triumphs. I could almost feel the frustration boiling, simmering just under the surface, but I plastered on a smile, burying my pain deep down. I had broken school records in track, aced my exams, yet every time I tried to bring it up, it felt like firing a flare into the darkness, only to watch it dim as quickly as it sparked. It was one particular evening that shattered whatever illusion I carried of being enough. I sat at the dinner table, the clinking of forks and the rustling of napkins filling the suffocating silence. The aroma of roasted chicken and garlic mashed potatoes wafted through the air like a false sense of comfort. Watching them laugh and gossip, I felt more like an outsider than ever. I swallowed hard, the taste of bittersweet resentment heavy in my throat as I mustered the courage to speak. "Dad, I broke my own record in the 400-meter dash today," I finally said, injecting all the excitement I could into my voice. "That's great, honey, but you should really try harder to be more like your cousin," he replied as casually as one might discuss the weather. It hit me like a cold slap to the face, the sting running deep. I could feel my heart plummet, a heavy weight anchoring me to the floor. "If you put in more effort and focused on your skills, maybe you could showcase your talents too." Silence fell upon me like a thick fog. They didn't see me. They didn't even notice how tightly my fingers curled around the edge of the dinner table, trying to squeeze out the frustration that was clawing its way up my chest. "I am trying," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper, yet tinged with desperation. "I have worked hard for everything I have achieved." "Weren't you proud of me?" "Listen, Sam, we don't want you to feel lesser than anyone," my mom chimed in, attempting to smooth things over, but she avoided looking me directly in the eye. "It's just that he's so passionate about his art. It would be lovely if you'd find something equivalent." As the words registered in my mind, the realization stained everything with anger. I was their second choice. I felt like a ghost in my own home, trapped in a never-ending loop of unworthiness. In that moment, pressure exploded within me. My breath quickened and I could feel the warmth of tears threatening to spill over. I blinked them back furiously, unwilling to show them my pain. I was done being dismissed. "That is exactly what I am talking about," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "What do you mean?" my dad asked, the genuine confusion etched on his face. "You are being overly sensitive, Samantha. You have no reason to feel this way. Every time I achieve something, it doesn't matter. You always go back to him, like nothing I do will ever be significant enough," I shouted, my voice breaking through the atmosphere of the room. My heart raced, pounding fiercely in my chest as if it were trying to escape the confines of this chaos. "I can't even talk about my achievements without you two comparing me to him. You just do not understand." They exchanged looks, their brows knitted together, faces edged with disappointment. It was hard for me to read their expressions, but I saw the unspoken judgment hovering between them. That is not what we are trying to do. We are merely trying to motivate you, my dad said, his tone flat and nonchalant. Motivate me? Anger blazed through me, smoldering deeper than my words could express. You think telling me I am not good enough is motivating? Enough, Samantha, my mother interjected, her voice slicing through the air. You are blowing this completely out of proportion. Are worried about you, that's all. Stop being so sensitive, you're turning this family dinner into a battlefield over nothing. I froze, their words invading my mind, dark and oppressive. I felt cornered, stifled by the layers of hurt and neglect. It is not nothing, it is everything to me. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, and I struggled to find harmony in my thoughts, desperation spilling out as I added, I just want you to notice me. Notice you, my dad echoed incredulously. We notice you all the time. You need to stop expecting praise for everything you do. Not every little accomplishment is groundbreaking. With that, I felt a part of me shrink away, the hope that flickered in my chest dimming into nothingness. The intense ache of my heart echoed throughout my body as I slumped back in my chair, every ounce of energy draining away. It felt like I was shouting into a void, my words bouncing back as whispers, unheard and unacknowledged. With my heart feeling like a stone, I quietly pushed my chair back, standing up, the unsteady legs trembling beneath me. Maybe I am not enough for you to notice, I murmured, barely audible as I crossed the threshold into silence. Their laughter faded behind me, leaving me with an empty echo in my hollow chest, filled with the bitterness of dismissal. In that moment, I decided I had to find a way to make them see me. It was time to break the silence, to rise from the shadows, and become someone worth their attention, even if it meant embracing the darkness within myself, for the sake of revengey. Air was thick, with the savory scent of roasted chicken and garlic mashed potatoes, when I first felt that fury bubbling inside me. The dinner table was sprawling, draped in a white cloth adorned with fraying edges and clashing patterns from old family gatherings. The soft glow of flickering candles cast a warm light, while the clink of silverware mixed with the laughter of my relatives. But somehow, amidst all the cheer, I could hardly breathe. I sat there quietly, my heart racing just under the surface as I watched my mother rise from her seat. Everyone, she said, her voice ringing through the room like a tone of brass. I stiffened, knowing well enough what was coming. I want to take a moment to recognize my very special daughter, your cousin, the golden child. All know how gifted she is. First chair in the orchestra, top of her class, and now she is the lead in the spring play. My heart sank as I heard the rising cheers and claps, echoing around the room like a relentless wave, drowning me completely. I felt my stomach twist uncomfortably, each cheer hammering away at my own feelings of worthlessness. I stared at my mother's face, radiant with pride, her eyes shimmering with a love I could only dream of knowing intimately. She's become everything I've ever hoped for. She continued, and suddenly the laughter faded. A crushing silence wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. That moment was my breaking point. The clarity of truth struck me like a lightning bolt, piercing through the veil of denial I had woven around myself. You are nothing but a shadow in this family. In that instant, everything I had ever felt, every slight dismissal, every comparison, every time my wins felt dimmed in the light of her achievements, came barreling to the forefront of my mind. I could hear my resentment building, a hot, roaring furnace under my skin. Look at her, so poised and talented, my mother cooed. I am just so proud, and I hope you all see what an inspiration she is. A lump formed in my throat, choking the words I wished to scream back, words of rebellion and anguish tangled within me. My cousin smiled, her teeth gleaming like pearls, basking in the spotlight that illuminated her every flawlessness. I could see the effortless confidence radiating off her. It made me sick. Deep down, I knew it was unfair to loathe her. She was innocent in the racial tension I felt, yet I was drowning in my own inadequacy, and the walls felt as if they were closing in. My hands tightened around the edge of the table, the wooden grain digging into my palms as I forced myself to sit still, to hold back from exploding. When my mother finally sat down, her gaze flicked to me, slightly cocked as if she sensed the storm brewing behind my cool facade. Samantha, dear, why don't you share something with the family? She suggested, her tone deceptively gentle, as if she were handing me a peace offering when all I craved was acknowledgement and validation. I took a sharp breath, the taste of metal filling my mouth. My voice twisted in my throat, much like the twinkling lights overhead that seemed too bright, too cheerful amidst the chaos swirling within me. I don't have anything to share, I managed, forcing a smile that felt like a grotesque mask. I guess I've just been busy. Oh, come on now, exclaimed my uncle with a bemused grin. You must have something planned for us. How about your art? That painting you started last week. The mention of my art felt like a piercing thorn when compared to my cousin's innumerable talents. I had put paint to canvas, sure, but I felt small in that moment. It seemed insignificant next to a symphony and a leading role. Yes, I want to see, added my cousin excitedly. She had always found joy in my sketches, in my aspiration to capture moments on paper and canvas. Yet, despite her enthusiasm, it was just more salt in the wound. Come on, share it with us. Please don't, I whispered under my breath, but it was a futile wish. They were all waiting, expectant. I could almost hear the ticking clock in the distance. Each tick amplified my frustration and despair, echoing moments lost and opportunities grasped by someone else. I finished a piece, I said finally, my own voice sounding foreign. But it's not as grand, I trailed off, refusing to admit how small it felt compared to everything my cousin had achieved. The murmurs of encouragement began to fade as I felt an overwhelming sense of isolation wash over me. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed my cousin nudging my arm, her eyes brimming with sincerity. No, I want to see it. You've always had a unique style. You should be proud of your work. It was genuine, yet in that moment, it felt as though she was grasping for something she could never hold, the attention I so fiercely craved. I took one last crack at holding back the tide of resentment surging within me. I wanted to shout, "You have everything. You don't get to talk about passion and inspiration when you've never fought for anything." My heart pounded with the weight of suppressed words, thoughts colliding chaotically as bitterness ignited my veins. I was done being the overlooked niece, the shadow. In my mind, a vow was forming. One day they would see. They would not disregard me any longer. Look, my voice surged with strength, unleashing fierceness I had buried too long. I don't know why you think I should just sit here and be your little cheering section while you bask in your achievements. It's exhausting. The words tumbled out, raw and jagged, surprising even myself. Gasps rippled around the table as I pushed away my chair, standing up abruptly. Shadows of shock swept across their faces, but I no longer cared. I won't just stand here any longer. Bursting from the confines of their achievements, I vowed that no longer would I be invisible among them. I had no clear path ahead. A dark approach lay before me, but a spark flickered with a ferocity I had never allowed myself to express. I turned on my heel, resolving in that moment to take the narrative into my own hands, whatever guise of revenge that might come in. It was the beginning of a reckoning, the hammer of my silent fury finally ready to strike back as I sat in my dimly lit bedroom. The cold glow of my computer screen illuminated the scattered papers on my desk, each one a piece of evidence I had painstakingly gathered. The walls around me felt like they were closing in. I had found what I was looking for, proof that would turn my carefully laid plans into action. I can't believe she was dumb enough to leave these trails, I whispered to myself, the thrill sending a rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I wanted to feel angry, but I was overwhelmed with excitement instead. All those late nights spent trawling through bank statements and emails had finally paid off. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of what I was about to do pressing against my chest like a heavy blanket. I glanced over my notes one last time, heart racing at the thought of what would come next. My phone buzzed beside me, a lifeline to the outside world. I hesitated, then picked it up, half hoping it would be a distraction from what I had to do. It was a message from my cousin, a casual reminder of our plans for dinner tomorrow. "Hey, can't wait to see you, let's catch up." My stomach twisted at the thought. The girl who had deceived not just me but everyone else in the family with her charming smile and innocent facade. "Catch up," I muttered with a scoff, "right." I had been compiling bullet points in my notes. It was important to stay sharp and focused. Emotions could cloud my judgment. She had manipulated so many into believing her lies. Even after everything I had uncovered, something in me wanted to confront her. But I quickly reminded myself of the risks. Instantly, my resolve strengthened. No, I am not here to face her. I am here to ensure she pays for what she has done, I told myself firmly. I opened the file containing the latest bank statement I had acquired, highlighting the transactions that smoldered like embers in my mind. There was a charge for an expensive designer handbag and another for an extravagant weekend getaway, both purchased with money stolen from our grandmother's trust fund. I could almost hear the mocking laughter of my cousin echoing in my head, and each realization tempered my excitement with cold fury. The clock ticked loudly, a constant reminder that time was not on my side. Tomorrow, my cousin would be expecting a pleasant evening, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. I needed to act quickly and carefully. I took a deep breath, grappling with my own emotions. This is justice, I reminded myself, trying to drown out the guilt that crept in from time to time. It was easy to slip into thoughts of revenge. Everyone loved a good story about a hero taking down the villain, right? But I was not a hero. I was simply the person forced to deal with the consequences of her greed. I quickly opened my email, fingers trembling with anticipation. Typing up the anonymous report felt like inscribing my name in history. I began composing my message to the authorities, my fingers dancing over the keyboard as the words spilled out. To whom it may concern, I am writing to report suspicious activity concerning a trust fund established for the benefit of a grandmother. I have evidence of unauthorized transactions and would be glad to share it upon your request. As I wrote, I thought about the detectives who would read it, how they would piece it together, and ultimately, how they would come to appreciate the thoroughness of my work. I painted a carefully crafted image of someone desperate to reveal the truth, knowing that anonymity allowed me to wield the power without direct confrontation. The thrill was intoxicating. My breath came more rapidly the deeper I delved into the details. I included the dates, the amounts, and even the items purchased, painting a vivid picture of her greed. Each word ignited my determination and emboldened me further. This is it, I thought, feeling strength bloom within me. This is what she deserves. The growing satisfaction of being the puppet master made me feel alive. After I hit send, I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, letting the tension slip from my body. There was something strangely exhilarating about knowing my cousin would be blindsided. It almost felt like final justice, a long overdue correction for the inequity that had festered for too long. I imagined her face when the authorities came knocking, their faces stern, their voices cold. I could see that innocent smile fading into disbelief and confusion, the way she would flounder like a fish out of water as the truth clawed its way to the surface. Suddenly, a knock at my door broke my reverie. "Are you ready for dinner?" my mom called through the closed door. I hesitated, guilty thoughts racing through my head. "Yeah, be right out." I tried to keep my voice light, but inside my heart was pounding. I had to act normal, had to blend in with the world outside my room. I quickly shoved my papers into a drawer, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins, reminding me this was just the beginning. As I made my way to the dining room, I couldn't shake the thrill of impending revenge. What if the authorities acted quickly? What if I could see the tables turn right before my eyes? My heart hammered in my chest, each beat a reminder of the power I had now learned to wield. As I joined my family at the table, a slow smile crept across my lips, a secret I held tightly to my chest like a warm treasure. Tomorrow would be the day I took back control, and nothing would stop me from ensuring justice was served. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in our family grew unbearable. It was thick in the air, wrapping around us like a choking fog. My cousin was facing an investigation for her fraudulent activities, and I could feel the weight of those accusations pressing down on me, too. I don't know if it was the flash of her confident smile on those glossy family photos, the way she twirled her hair as she laughed, or how the light seemed to shine brighter when she walked into a room. Whatever it was, she had managed to charm everyone into believing she was perfect. It was exhausting, and yet I smiled, knowing soon enough the truth would break through, shattering that image into a million irreparable pieces. I observed her as she lingered in our relatives' conversations, their passionate defense of her innocence echoing through the air like self-righteous hymns. "She is just misunderstood," an aunt proclaimed, her voice heavy with indignation. "This is all a nasty smear campaign," my uncle added, frowning as if the tension were a personal affront to his very being. My grandmother, too weak to stand, placed her hand over her heart like a shield, murmuring prayers for her beloved granddaughter. How oblivious they all were, wrapped in their thick cocoon of denial. As days passed, my excitement built within me, and I felt as close to bursting as a pressure cooker nearing its limit. My heart raced at the thought of that moment when the truth would emerge, burning through the fabric of our family's lies. She still believed herself untouchable, the golden child. But the authorities had gone silent in a way that assured me their investigation was deep, carefully searching through the layers of deceit built over years of misplaced trust. The day of reckoning arrived, and with it an exhilarating thrill. I stood in the corner of the room, a mere shadow among the riled-up bodies, hidden yet vibrating with anticipation. The dining room felt revoltingly familiar, the long wooden table stretched out like an altar to the truth that would soon be revealed. The air was charged, thick with anxiety as my family gathered, fidgeting and exchanging worried glances. They were ready to absorb whatever explanation I knew was coming, their collective hope clashing with my own sick satisfaction. When she walked in, she carried herself with an air of arrogance, unaware of the storm swirling around her. My cousin wore a confident smile, heels clacking against the hardwood floor as she approached, her aura still luminous. "What is this all about?" she asked, pouting slightly as if that could mask her confusion. "I have nothing to hide." I almost snorted, those words dripped with irony. And then in walked the authorities. The air shifted, thickening like the storm clouds before a downpour. Their presence magnified the tension, a taut string ready to snap. One of them, a tall man in a crisp blue suit, cleared his throat, silencing the murmurs that had erupted like wildfire. The room shrank as he began. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering today," he began, his voice firm and authoritative yet carrying an undertone of sympathy. As he outlined the charges against her, piece by piece, I felt a rush of pride build within me. It felt like standing on a cliff's edge, peering into the abyss beneath me, daring to leap. Each accusation landed like a stone, heavy and meaningful. I watched the expressions of my family shift from confusion to disbelief to anger as they registered the gravity of the situation. "You have been implicated in numerous fraudulent activities," the officer continued, his voice unwavering. "Fraudulent accounts, misappropriation of family assets, and much more." The words hung in the air around us, buzzing like angry wasps. "What?" my cousin chirped, her voice shrill and panicked, breaking through the silence. "This is ridiculous. I would never do something so low. Who would even say such a thing?" Her eyes scanned the room, searching for an ally, a sign that this was all just a big misunderstanding. The room inhaled a collective gasp, the kind that sounded like crushed hopes and bruised hearts. "This is a mistake," she pleaded, her voice trembling slightly now. "Family would not do this to family." But I felt a rush of satisfaction at her desperation, the way she scrambled to regain control. How could she not know that family loyalties are fragile at best? I caught a glimpse of my uncle's face, his expression a mixture of anger and disappointment. "Who would betray us like this? Who would turn against their own flesh and blood?" he shouted, fury burning in his eyes as he stared into her bewildered face. "You're lying. This has to be a lie." The officer flipped through his documents, pulling out a series of bank statements undeniably linked to her name. These documents outline the transactions that took place. Funds diverted into personal accounts, house purchases, vacations, all on the backs of your own family. "Your own trust," he laid out, his tone steady. Suddenly it felt as though the walls had closed in on my cousin, as if she could feel the weight of all the truths she had been hiding. Her presence lost its luster, washed away by the stark traces of guilt. My family gasped collectively, their golden child stained, trampled beneath the collective disbelief. I could barely stifle my satisfaction as I saw the disbelief flood through my family like a wave crashing against the shore. The emotional toll began to lift, dissipating in the air like mist as the truth wove its way through the walls of our home. The silence enveloped us, stretching painfully before bursting into a cacophony of familial chaos. Names shouted, accusations hurled, and betrayal echoed like venomous screams. I sat back, a quiet smile settling on my lips, reveling in the justice that had come knocking. Evolving from the shadows I had cast. The air inside the courtroom was thick with tension, a palpable energy that vibrated through me as I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. The judge's gavel echoed in my ears as the final verdict was read, a heavy sentence that felt like a thunderclap crashing down on my cousin. She wore a mask of defiance, but I could see the cracks forming beneath it, the way her hands trembled ever so slightly as the reality of her fate sank in. I did not expect to feel a shiver of satisfaction rushing over me like a wave, but there it was, rolling with an almost dizzying force, as if I had been submerged beneath the ocean's surface and had just come up for air. "Guilty," the word hung in the air, thick and suffocating, like a cloud of smoke that would not dissipate. The thought of her consequences, serious, looming, unyielding, sent a thrill through my veins, one that whispered that justice was finally serving its cold dish on the family table. I turned to my parents, who were seated in the front row. Their expressions were a tapestry of emotions, woven tightly together: remorse, shame, disbelief. I caught my mother's eye first, her face slightly pale, lips pressed into a thin line as if she had just bitten into something bitter and unexpected. "Why did it have to come to this?" she murmured to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt her gaze drifting towards me, searching, seeking something that I was just beginning to understand: acknowledgement. I wanted to scream, to tell her how I'd felt invisible all these years, just a shadow lurking in the periphery of this family, forever living in my cousin's footsteps. Instead, I simply stood there, solid and unyielding, absorbing the weight of the moment. I did not want revenge when all this began. I wanted recognition. A warped sense of justice clung to me like the courtroom's stale air. Now, witnessing her fall from grace, it felt like I was tearing down the wall she had built around her perfect image, brick by brick, her denial crumbling into dust beneath the weight of truth. Do you see me now? I thought, glancing sideways at my cousin, her face growing red, eyes glossy with what came as humiliation. Somewhere inside me, a fierce voice rose above the storm of emotions, demanding acknowledgement not just from her, but from the entire family. It was almost too overwhelming to hold onto, a desperate wish to be more than the spare wheel of this twisting carousel of favoritism. For so long, I had been the one they overlooked. I managed to blend into the background, overshadowed by her accomplishments. The perfect grades, the endless accolades, the magnetic charm she wielded that ensnared everyone. It stung every time I was reminded of it, the way they turned their backs on my bruised spirit. But today, standing in that room, something within me had shifted. I remembered the countless times I had been ignored, the whispers of doubt that clouded my thoughts. Why bother? Today felt different. The truth always comes out. I wanted to proclaim, not just to her, but to my family, to my parents, who I wished could finally grasp the depth of my struggles. I may have been your second choice, but I have risen from the ashes of your neglect. Each thought surged within me, giving me power, clarity. The judge's gavel fell again like a thunderbolt, disrupting my contemplation. 3 years in a corrective facility, it echoed, sending ripples of shock throughout the audience. Gasps broke out, filled with disbelief, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. She had played the role of the perfect granddaughter, the ideal cousin, playing everyone like a finely tuned instrument. And now the music had stopped, leaving a haunting silence behind. I cannot believe this is happening, my father muttered, running a hand through his hair, something he always did when stressed. His eyes darted away from me, almost as if he wanted to avoid acknowledging the emotional shift that had happened in our family. My throat felt tight as I looked at him. I wanted to shake him, say, "You should have seen the signs long ago. It took me stepping forward for you to realize it." He turned slightly towards me now, shoulder to shoulder with my mother, both of them aching with the same realization, that their refusal to see my pain had unwittingly made me feel like an unwanted guest in our own home. She acted like she was untouchable, I found myself saying, my voice rising with the clarity that comes with righteous indignation. She got everything handed to her, yet I was reviled as a burden. But no more. Words spilled out before I had a chance to think, feeling sharper than knives, the truth slicing through the stagnant air like a beacon. Both of their gazes landed on me, their expressions morphing from confusion to recognition. Was that remorse I saw in my father's eyes? The sense of being seen for once not as a supporting character, but as the main act sent a thrill through me. "Samantha, we didn't mean," my mother started, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. "This isn't about you. This is about me." I felt emboldened, stronger than I had ever felt in that moment. You neglected me while you showered her with love and attention. Today, it is my truth that breaks free, not just hers. The realization settled like a warm embrace within me. I had emerged from the darkness into the light, my worth validated in a way I had longed for. I was no longer the second choice, cast aside, forgotten in the shadows. The gavel fell one last time, sealing the verdict, the finality echoing through my heart. Justice had served its purpose today, maybe not in the way I anticipated, but in a manner that felt right all the same. Here I stood, no longer afraid, my true self revealed, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The taste of victory was sweet, even among the ashes of betrayal, and I felt a relentless fire ignite within me.